games you grew up playing were not the safe private spaces you thought they were. Some of the people who paid for them were not the people named in the credits.
Yo, I think this is the first time I'd make a video without my hat, so I ain't got the funds for turkey yet, so we just gonna do it.
Some of them weren't really games at all. They were something else entirely dressed up in a game's clothing.
This is really what has changed. We have built a panopticon, but what sits at the top of it is a computer. That computer witnesses everything we do.
Billions of dollars are spent spying on Americans, whether it's NSA or CIA or FBI.
Imagine the data you've shared and all the hours you've spent gaming. Then scale that up to 3 billion people from every country on the planet, across the US, UK, all of Europe, China, Russia, Iran.
And all this information that used to be ephemeral, right? Where were you when you were 8 years old, you know? Where'd you go after you had a bad breakup? You know, who'd you spend the night with? Who'd you call after? All this information used to be ephemeral, meaning it disappeared, right? Like the morning dew, it would be gone. No one would remember it. But now, these things are stored. Now, these things are saved.
But the real truth is, if mass surveillance were the only crime here, this would be a much shorter story. But it's also about changing the past and engineering the future, maybe permanently for all of us.
I think the military knows full well what it's doing, and I think their intent is to indoctrinate children at the youngest age.
And the twist.
Does anybody remember when they used to have like the US Army Twitch page? I think they had a Twitch page, or they had like US Army, US Marines like sponsored like segments on people's stuff. Like, unless I'm bugging, like that was crazy to me. But I mean, social media is a form of marketing, so I mean, they trying to get more people to sign up, but I don't think people trying to sign up right now, so yeah.
The twisted irony is that the very medium intelligence agencies are actively targeting is the same medium that's been warning us for decades.
What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths.
That's from Metal Gear Solid 2, a game released in November 2001, 2 months after 9/11. It describes a shadowy AI network called
Rest in peace.
the Patriots that secretly filters what information reaches the public, which is not far from what the NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden revealed to the world years later. And then there's this prescient theory from Juice X, released in 2000.
Some people just don't understand.
Not far from
The CIA got me. Okay, no, I'm good. But hold on.
2001, 2 months after 9/11. It describes a shadowy AI network called the Patriots that secretly filters what information reaches the public, which is not far from what the NSA whistleblower Edward.
Where is this guy? Where is this guy? I haven't seen anything from him since that little whistleblower stuff he was doing a minute ago. Hey, I'm not asking too many questions, I'm just curious. I ain't trying to go missing like them scientists, so.
What Snowden revealed to the world years later. And then there's this prescient theory from Juice X, released in 2000.
Some people just don't understand the dangers of indiscriminate surveillance.
Need to be observed and understood is when satisfied by God. Now, we can implement the same functionality with data mining algorithms.
Since then, gaming has evolved into a new frontier for intelligence operations and interventions, like when government intelligence operatives practically invaded World of Warcraft and Second Life.
Anyone playing the game World of Warcraft as druids, death knights, warlocks could also have another designation, surveillance targets. According to newly disclosed classified documents, the NSA and its British counterpart have been infiltrating World of Warcraft, another online game called Second Life, and the Xbox Live console.
There was actually one fictitious scenario presented at a conference in which players in the game were talking about casting a fire spell, but really they were talking about setting off a bomb outside the White House.
Eventually,
What? What?
there were so many government agents in World of Warcraft from so many different agencies that they kept bumping into each other. The NSA had to set up a dedicated unit whose only job was to stop spies from one US agency from surveilling spies from another US agency inside a fantasy game. The official justification for this was counter-terrorism, and there was some truth in that. The Islamic State once revealed custom modifications of Grand Theft Auto 5 built to recruit fighters and let players reenact real terror attacks. They also built playable replicas of terrorist attacks inside Minecraft, used as recruitment material aimed at children. And by the 2020s, the FBI was issuing formal public warnings about groups using Roblox to radicalize, groom, and in some cases...
Hey man, Roblox has all the controversy in the world, man. And like this, I'm not even gonna talk too much. Everybody knows what's going on there, but I didn't know they was doing terrorism on there too. Like that's crazy.
Coerce kids into harmful acts on camera.
There's a lot of different approaches they take, but always employing some kind of deception, some kind of threat, or promises of money or gifts to get that young person to open up and talk to them.
But there's also a long track history of sensitive military information getting leaked on games or by gamers that show you why the CIA wants a presence here. In April 2023, the most serious US intelligence breach in Snowden surfaced through a Minecraft Discord server called Thug Shaker Central. The leaker was a 21-year-old Massachusetts Air National Guardsman named Jack Teixeira, an intelligence analyst who'd been granted top secret clearance at the age of 19. He'd been photographing classified Pentagon documents.
I mean, what did they expect? He's 19. What did they expect?
Documents on his family kitchen's table and posting them to roughly 40 gamers in his Discord group to win arguments and show off. He was eventually sentenced to 15 years in prison. And it wasn't a one-off. For years, players of the tank game War Thunder have been leaking genuine classified military documents to win forum arguments about how accurately their tanks are modeled in the game. That list includes the British Challenger 2 tank, the American F-15E Strike Eagle, the AH-64 Apache Technical Manual, the AV-8B Harrier, multiple Russian and Chinese main battle tanks, and a full 730-page dossier on the Eurofighter Typhoon.
In July 2021, a player was arguing about the British Challenger 2 main battle tank. To settle the disagreement, they posted basically the tank's operating manual, an action that quickly got the UK Ministry of Defence involved. Then 3 months later, a French player claiming to be a crew member in a Leclerc Serie 2 tank, in service since 1992, again got into an argument about the capabilities of their tank, my tank, your tank, and again posted part of the tank's operation manual. Come on, guys!
Over here leaking schematics of... Shoot, they don't even need spies when you got our own people just leaking stuff.
But what the intelligence community really wants from gaming isn't just what you did inside of it. It's what you believe when you come out. And they might just change the course of someone's life in the time between. And nowhere is this more pervasive than in the biggest video game franchise of all time. That franchise is Call of Duty. Call of Duty is the biggest video game franchise in history. It's bigger even than the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And for over 20 years, the US military has helped dictate its content. Since 2005, almost every mainline Call of Duty has employed a Pentagon military advisor. The most prolific is Hank Kiersey, a retired lieutenant colonel who served in the 82nd Airborne and taught at West Point. He stated his assistance was mostly for the purposes of gameplay and realism.
So I'm able to give the last little bit of fidelity on making sure the game is as close as possible to what you would hear, feel, sound like as a real soldier in a game.
When Modern Warfare came out, about 6 hours in, the player reaches a mission set on a road the game calls Tariq Amwat. In English, that means the Highway of Death. It involves a convoy of civilians trying to flee, bombed from the air, and hundreds are dead. In the game, the narrator says it was the Russians.
Try to escape to the mountains. There is only one road, Tariq Amwat. the highway of death. The Russians bombed it during the invasion, killing the people trying to escape.
The Highway of Death is a real place. It's a real road in Kuwait leading north towards the Iraqi border, and a real massacre did happen there. But it wasn't in the last few years, and it wasn't the Russians. On the night of February 26, 1991, US-led coalition forces bombed a retreating column of Iraqi soldiers and civilians, trying to escape at the end of the Gulf War. Aircraft disabled the vehicles at the front and rear to trap everyone in between, then spent hours bombing what was left. Seymour Hersh later documented a US tank platoon opening fire on 350 surrendered unarmed Iraqi soldiers. The road earned its name because of what the coalition did to it under George H.W. Bush, and it's all publicly documented. The 2019 Modern Warfare reboot took that event, renamed the attackers, and handed it to the world as an example of what Russia was doing in the present day. This is exactly what the Colonel in Metal Gear Solid 2 described. Not just the control of content, but the control of context. And the loop goes both ways, with COD actively galvanizing interest in US Army recruitment and supporting training.
He also told me it's a great training product. I've had him link the Xboxes together, and the sergeant will actually train his teams with the Modern Warfare game.
Call of Duty.
See, I had an argument with my homie about if basketball players, if they played 2K on their off time, would they like get better on like how to like run lanes and like set picks and like learn plays if they played like with their own team, or if they were able to study while playing? Because in my head I'm thinking this stuff is like a simulation, the same way they just said like if they played COD it's like a simulation, it's a training exercise. And I had like, me and my homie had like the longest, he's like, no, that wouldn't work, I'm like, I'm telling you, I feel like if I play 2K long enough I'd be able to learn about like how to move on the court correctly. It won't teach you like skills, but like teach you like spacing and like what type of like how to do certain scenarios and stuff like that. And I feel like I was right, but yeah, I don't know.
The rabbit hole gets a whole lot stranger though. By 2014, the franchise had released Black Ops and Black Ops 2, and the man who directed both of them was called Dave Anthony. In September 2014, he left Activision and joined the Atlantic Council, one of Washington's most influential foreign policy institutions, funded by Lockheed Martin, NATO, and the US State Department. Specifically, he joined the Art of Future War project, hired to imagine new forms of terrorist attacks. For his
So we went from making video games to working in the government. That's a crazy career boost.
first conference appearance, Anthony presented a scenario arguing how easy it would be for terrorists to carry out a lone wolf attack on a hotel in Las Vegas.
One of my great fears, which I'm going to use as an example of this, is what would happen if this attack took place on our mainland, and I'm going to use Las Vegas as an example. It could be that you have 100 of these guys who may be on our soil right now, who may even be US citizens, who could legally walk into whatever gun store they choose, buy some assault rifles and start attacking soft targets. And that the instability that this would cause to our country would be incredible and immense.
3 years later, on October 1st, 2017, very eerily 3 years to the exact date of that talk getting posted online, a man named Stephen Paddock checked into the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas and opened fire on a country music festival below.
There's so many conspiracies about this. I don't know what's real, but apparently there was the conspiracy that he was shooting from the window, and then there was another conspiracy that there were people on the ground. There was another one that there was an actual helicopter like murking people from the sky with like a big machine gun. Like, stuff is crazy, man.
60 people were killed and 800 wounded, and it remains one of the deadliest and most mysterious mass shootings by a single perpetrator in American history. Incidentally, in that same talk, Anthony explicitly names Edward Snowden as a villain.
Edward Snowden looks like the sort of head of the chess club. And, you know, one individual with technology in the wrong hands and information in the wrong hands can cause massive instability and destabilization to the country these days.
And he isn't an outlier. Activision is bristling with people who've spent careers in the national security states. COD, meanwhile, is just the tip of this iceberg. While there are many examples of games created with military consulting, which is fair from an accuracy and gameplay perspective, Full Spectrum Warrior, released on Xbox in 2004, is a more unique case. What looked like a normal retail game was actually a Pentagon training simulator with a civilian skin pulled over the top.
What?
There was a cheat code that unlocked the military training build underneath. This is the cheat code itself. When you enter it, an in-game message pops up to tell you this is for the US military only. There are a handful of other obvious titles that were guided by government interests too, like the Tom Clancy series, which reinforced US military dominance while stereotyping numerous other nations as their immoral enemies. But once, the opposite happened. Take Spec Ops: The Line, which halfway through forces the player to commit a white phosphorus attack on civilians that was deliberately modeled on a real US war crime in Iraq. Clearly, this did not have Pentagon support, and then it suspiciously bombed. The lead writer later said no major publisher would ever fund anything like it again. So when you stop and think about that, games have drifted a long way from their origins as a form of social critique or even political dissent. In the late 90s and 2000s, games like Deus Ex, Metal Gear Solid, Bioshock, and Command & Conquer Red Alert stood toe-to-toe with the best films of their era. They warned us about surveillance states, military-industrial corruption, the dangers of unchecked AI, and the moral cost of war. They didn't just entertain you, they argued with you, and critically, they challenged your worldview. Snowden has said that he played Metal Gear Solid as a teenager, and that this affected how he came to think about how governments would spy on their populations. Even Call of Duty was once more willing to push into uncomfortable territory. In Modern Warfare 2 back in 2009, the player goes undercover with a Russian ultra-nationalist terror cell that then
Yeah, this had a lot of controversy behind it. I never played the series, like the old series. I played the new one, but my computer's cooked, so I couldn't really play it. But like this, there was so many like people talking about this. It was crazy.
massacres civilians at a Moscow airport. At the end of the mission, the cell's leader kills the undercover American operative and then leaves his body behind, making it look like the US carried out the attack. The attack is a false flag designed to frame the United States and trigger a war with Russia. The mission was infamously called No Russian. But you've got to notice the boundary it never crosses. The US isn't behind the attack. The player is placed inside the atrocity, but the responsibility is still with the enemy despite it being deliberately provocative. By 2019, that line had hardened. The ambiguity was stripped away. The enemies made clearer. And in that one case, a real-world US military action was reworked into something attributed to Russian forces. Today, the biggest games on the planet do something close to the opposite of what they once did. They model real US military hardware in extreme detail. The enemies reinforce an orchestrated worldview. They then get reviewed for the realism of their gunplay, not the seriousness of their politics, and the quality has dropped through the floor. Who can remember being excited by a Call of Duty release, or any big game title release at all? Probably one of the few major games that effectively parodizes and criticizes America is GTA, because the studio Rockstar North is based in Scotland. While manipulating games and their narratives have clearly been
Got a lot of hours launched or logged in GTA. I don't know when we gonna see GTA 6, especially if they talking about all this government conspiracy stuff. I don't know what's going on, but I don't know. But GTA is definitely influential And they try to say that it's like so influential that like people are carrying out acts because of it, but I don't know. I just feel like you can't really blame the games for what people do, because people know right from wrong, but that's a discussion for another day.
Top priority for decades. At other times, the strategy has been much more deliberate and intentional. There's another game deliberately engineered over decades to recruit people, more specifically young people and kids, into the armed forces. In July 2002, the US Army released a video game called America's Army. It's not only a game about the Army, it's a game by the Army. Free to download, free to play, funded with tens of millions of US taxpayer dollars, and designed from the ground up as a recruitment tool for teenagers. And it worked. US Army surveys found that by 2008, the game had more impact on recruiting than any other form of Army advertising combined. 1 in 5 military academy cadets entering West Point in 2005 had played the game before enlisting. The US military is legally barred from enlisting anyone under 17. America's Army was built to start the marketing conversation much earlier, which they themselves admitted. The guy who designed that game was called Casey Wadden.
Well, what I said earlier,
He allegedly wrote the following: America's Army was explicitly designed to target 12 and 13-year-old boys who had yet to decide what to do with their lives. It then shut down in 2022 after 20 years, but by then, the recruitment strategy had already moved with the times and ventured onto social media. In late 2018, the US Army then entered Generation Z by opening up an official Twitch channel.
see, I knew I wasn't tripping.
The Navy and the Air Force followed. Recruiters, soldiers in uniform paid by the taxpayer, started spending their working days playing Call of Duty and Fortnite on livestream, all just happily chatting with the audience, and the audience was mostly children. To pull kids in, the channel ran what looked like giveaways for free stuff, except the link didn't go to a contest, it went to a military recruitment form, and there were no winners.
A giveaway link, which then redirected without any further details of the contest, which was supposedly for an Xbox Series 2 Elite controller. Once they redirected to the giveaway page, though, it was a sign-up for the recruitment form and to be directed by a recruitment officer, without any further details of the past winners of the contest.
Gamers started doing speedrun competitions to see who could get banned by the US Army the fastest. Twitch eventually went to war with the US Army, ordering them to stop running the fake giveaways because they violated gambling rules. But it still happens on a smaller scale today. Up until now, the agency's influence in gaming has mostly been about guns and war, but it actually hides in some really unsuspecting places, including in benign games that don't even look American. In July 2016, a mobile game launched that got 1 billion people to walk outside, point their phone cameras at their own streets, and then send the footage back to a server. If you didn't play it yourself, you know people who did, and that game was Pokemon Go. It was developed by Niantic, a company founded by a former US State Department official. So if you thought this game was a Japanese export, you were wrong. Before Niantic, that official had run a satellite mapping startup called Keyhole. And in February 2003, Keyhole received early-stage funding from In-Q-Tel, the venture capital arm of the CIA. The Q is a reference to Q from James Bond. Within weeks of the CIA's investment, Keyhole's mapping software was used by the Pentagon to brief US military commanders on bombing targets in Iraq.
Okay.
Google eventually acquired the company in 2004 for $35 million and renamed the software Google Earth. Pokemon Go launched with more daily use.
What? What?
Targets in Iraq. Google eventually acquired the company in 2004 for $35 million and renamed the software Google Earth.
Yo, that's... Wow.
Pokemon Go launched with more daily users than Twitter within a week. Every street, every park, every schoolyard all scanned and sent to the server with full user permissions. The US Energy Department got worried enough to call Niantic directly, because Pokestops had started appearing inside top-secret nuclear facilities. The IDF even banned soldiers from playing Pokemon Go in July 2016, after Pokestops and Pokemon spawned inside active military bases. Submarine
Yo, could you imagine some person like, oh, I gotta get that Lugia. It's in Area 51. I gotta. Yo, that's. Nah. Nah, that's crazy.
Mariners crewed in the UK's nuclear submarines weren't allowed to play the game because it gave away their position. At its peak, Pokemon Go would have revealed more about top-secret locations than the world's most powerful satellite imagery systems. It was nothing short of an international espionage crisis delivered in the form of the most harmless game imaginable. And this cuts right to the heart of why gaming is an amazing tool for intelligence. It's an interactive Trojan horse that no one suspects of harm. Many countries banned the game outright or called it a spy front. Then in 2024, a Niantic executive was asked on camera whether the company's large geospatial model, meaning a 3D map of the real world, built from a decade of Pokemon Go player footage, could then be sold to governments and militaries.
Exactly.
Listen to his answer.
Could you see militaries, governments seeking to use LGMs and purchase them from you?
I could definitely see it.
I could definitely see it. That's pretty ominous when you remember that the company at the center of it was 3 degrees removed from the CIA and its investors. While the CIA's fingerprints on Pokemon Go are oblique, traceable only through corporate history and venture capital filings, another game developer's story is much more direct. Because there are very human consequences to the geopolitical side of gaming, the same as there was for Gary DeVore. He was found at the bottom of a ravine with his hands chopped off when he was making a film about exposing top US officials. This story ends with the developer in a cell on the other side of the world on television confessing to things he says he didn't do. He only just scraped his way out of the situation alive. His name is Amir Hekmati, born in Arizona in 1983 to Iranian-American parents. He served 4 years as a US Marine. After leaving the military, he worked as a contractor on projects for the US Department of Defense, including consulting on Arabic language content for a New York-based video game studio called Kuma Games. Kuma made a free-to-play first-person shooter called Kuma War. It was a strange, controversial product. Every few weeks, Kuma released a new playable mission recreating a real US military operation, often within days of it happening, like killing Osama bin Laden, which you can see here.
What? What the f- What?
Kuma weirdly
That's not controversial.
held a Pentagon contract to develop training and strategic communication materials for the US Department of Defense. In August 2011, Hekmati flew to Tehran to visit his grandmothers. He had never been to Iran before. 2 weeks into the trip, while visiting his aunt, he was arrested by Iranian intelligence officers. He said he was interrogated for up to 20 hours a day, and according to his testimony, beaten with batons, tasered repeatedly, administered drugs without his consent, and told his family would be killed if he didn't cooperate.
So I tried my best to, keep my head up and withstand all the pressures that were put upon me.
I never heard about this.
Some of which were very inhumane and unjust.
And then in December 2011, Iranian state television broadcast a videotaped confession and sentenced him to death for espionage. The sentence was overturned on appeal, and he was finally released in January 2016 as a part of the prison swap. The details surrounding the whole situation remain mysterious today.
I was at a point where I had just sort of accepted the fact that I was going to be spending 10 years in prison. So this was a surprise, and I just feel extremely blessed to see my government do so much for me and the other Americans.
At some point, you've got to ask where all of this is heading, because gaming is linked to intelligence operations is now in the process of coming full circle. Games offer a unique field of intervention, as we both interact with them and consume them. They also directly and indirectly train people in the art of modern warfare, and the indirect part is almost more nefarious. Joe Rogan and Theo Von discussed how movies helped engage soldiers' instincts to shoot to kill.
So in World War I, people were shooting, but they weren't shooting at the actual enemy. And so then they realized, well, we've got to do something about that. And so after that, they started creating all these really patriotic war movies where the guys are heroes. So then the next group of people that go to war are all going to be indoctrinated with these films.
Right.
And these
Arguably, however, games did much more work here. The military started using game-type software and Xbox controllers for drone strikes in the mid-2000s, and it was a deliberate planned move. The Pentagon even openly explained why they made that choice. A leading defense researcher, P.W. Singer, put it plainly in 2009 in his book Wired for War. Quote, "You have a generation coming in that's already been trained in their use, so they learn very quickly." A UN special
Yo, the government is. I'm not. You know what? I ain't got nothing to say.
investigator Philip Alston looked at the setup and described it at a risk of quote,
Nothing.
developing a PlayStation mentality to kill it. And just look at how it's progressed. Militaries around the world are actively developing systems that automatically generate targets from surveillance data. Every person inside a given population gets a score. The software can pick who lives and who dies. A human might spend a few seconds reviewing the recommendation before it's approved, but that loop is getting closed all the time. It is quite literally the video game the whole industry has been moving toward for 40 years, and the people who would one day run the system could have been training since childhood without even
That's what I was
realizing
about
it.
to say. Like, they've been training everyone who plays military games. That means Call of Duty, Siege, Battlefield. Nah, fam. Nah, that's crazy. That's crazy to think about.
Slowly but surely, the Overton window of cyber warfare has creaked open, leading us to a future that those 2000 cyberpunk dystopias warned us about.
We are trying to create a system that observes everyone and judges everyone in a way that we already know is not fair. It is not used properly, it is not used appropriately, it is not used effectively, and I believe does more harm than good. And why are we trying to create a system that sees everything we do and judges us, which is effectively trying to invent God, when we know that it is a dark and vengeful one? We need to think about the kind of technologies that we are putting in place that rule us, but we do not effectively control. You can't awaken someone who's pretending to be asleep.
That's the line Snowden closed his last long interview on. He took it from a friend who told him it was an old Native American saying. It means you can shout as loudly as you want at someone, but if they've decided not to hear you, you'll never get through to them. The story the public got about mass surveillance was absorbed, repackaged, and moved on from. The strategy behind it didn't shrink, it evolved exponentially. It implemented cutting-edge cameras, it wrote smarter software, it created friendlier interfaces, it entered every corner of our lives. The television, the console next to it, the monitor, the laptop, the controller in your hand, the headset on your head, the friends in the chat, the map of your house, the face on the camera, the voice on the mic. They built the world you play in. And so while you were playing it, they were learning everything about you. They turned one of the last bastions of hope and freedom into yet another field of intervention. And in the end, after all of it is said and done, the most dangerous game ever made probably wasn't the one you played, it was the one playing you.
Yo. Nah, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. So that means since release of these like army games, they've been training all of us to learn how to like move militant. Like, that's crazy to think about. And then the Pokemon Go thing was mapping out the world on some spy stuff, and then Google acquired all that information, bought it, and I don't know who even knows, like, Yo. That's crazy to think about, man. Well. Hey, uh, shout out Moon. Probably watch some more of his stuff because that was really good. That was really good, well put together. Yeah, I'm out. So, peace.